Hi, this is Jim from RV4x40.com.
And I'm Chris. Welcome to our home.
We're glad to have you with us today. We are visiting Alamosa, Colorado. We've escaped from the heat in Texas and then through New Mexico into southern Colorado, where the elevation is higher and fortunately the temperatures are cooler.
Alamosa is a smaller city of about 10,000 people, so we found that to be a nice change from some of the places we travel.
And the RV park there is Cool Sunshine RV Park. I give them a shout out. It is a really nice little park. It's fairly small, not a lot of sites, but it is very well done. It's new. It was just opened, I believe, in March of this year. That could have been March of last year. But it's new, and they have a lot of grass. They do a lot of irrigation in their property there. And so it was a very nice place to stay, and we got to pull through. They have several of those, and then they have some more back ends as well. Nicely laid out park, and you can walk to downtown Alamosa if you have a desire to do so. The reason we came here was primarily the natural things around Alamosa, the biggest one being the Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve. It's the largest dunes and the tallest dunes in the U.S. anywhere. They're 750 feet high at their highest, and it covers about 30 acres. The mountain streams there flowing into the San Luis Valley bring out a lot of sand and that type of silt out of the mountains when they run off, and that flows out into the desert, which the San Luis Valley is a high desert. So the sands are out there, and then as the wind comes from the west from the San Juan Mountains, it actually blows this sand back towards the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, and at the base of them, this sand has piled up for about 400,000 years is their estimate. There was a lake or a seabed in this part of the world at that time, and as it receded, then these valleys are formed, and then the winds come in and create this particular sand dune formation. So later on you'll see some pictures of the sand dunes and what we did out there. Talk a little bit about the valley itself. It is one of the largest high desert valleys in the world. It's around 8,000 square miles. It's some 125 miles long, extending from southern Colorado down into just the northern part of New Mexico, and it's about 74 miles wide. The average elevation in the valley is about 7,600 feet. Low is 7,000, high is about 8,100 feet. But just to the east of it is the Blanca Peak Mountain, which is 14,325 feet. It's one of the 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado that they like to talk about. And so it's a very, very large valley. Interestingly, the Rio Grande River starts up in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains and flows down through the valley, and it continues on down through New Mexico and Texas, and ends up going into the Gulf of Mexico some 1,885 miles from its headwaters. So quite a long river. It never has a whole lot of water in it except in the spring when the runoff is coming off. So if you're familiar with Texas and the Rio Grande Valley, it starts up here in southern Colorado. The valley was formed, of course, between these two mountain ranges, and it is a high desert area. One of the things that's interestingly is that agriculture does quite well. The soil itself is apparently quite fertile, but it's a desert, which means it doesn't get a lot of rainfall. But because of the runoff from the mountains and the snow melt in the spring, there is ample water. There's a lot of irrigation done, some with surface water out of the Rio Grande and others out of aquifers that are fed by the mountain streams. So you see a lot of irrigation, a lot of these big circular areas with huge irrigation systems. If you've flown over it and see the pattern of circles, this is one of the places you'll see those. A more recent development, because of the sunshine and the interest in solar energy, has been the development of photovoltaic or solar cell type of electric systems. These are multi-megawatt systems. There are several of them now in the valley. It's become a development area and actually displacing some agricultural land with solar farms. Another version of that was thought about and explored was using huge parabolic mirrors to actually focus the sun's rays, and from that you can create steam, and then you can use engines to drive turbines and make electricity that way. It's another way to convert solar energy to electricity. That process went on considering that plant for several years and eventually was abandoned over a lot of local objections to it. Another issue that's becoming to the fore is the need to construct very high power, high voltage transmission lines to get electric power out of the valley as they add more generating stations. And there is a great deal of opposition to building these huge towers going over the tops of the mountains to get the power out. So far that's still under consideration. But the valley was an early place for settlement back when the Spanish government and then Mexico controlled this territory. They reserved the San Luis Valley for the Ute Indians, or Native Americans if you prefer. That pact was kept in place until the end of the Mexican-American War. And in 1848, when that war concluded, and a lot of it was over territory boundaries and that type of thing was the reason the war was fought. But as that concluded, then the protection of the Mexican government was withdrawn, and settlers from both Mexico and the U.S. Americans started into the valley in the middle 1800s to start to settle the valley. So since then it's been developed more. Today the population is a mix of Hispanic heritage and Anglos. So that's a fairly typical Southwest kind of situation. In addition to the sand dunes, there is also in that area a waterfall, the Zapata Falls. They're up in the mountains. It's created where a mountain stream comes down through the rocks. And it's a very interesting fall because once you get there, you have to actually wade in the mountain stream to get up because the waterfall itself is up in a kind of crevasse in the mountains, and you have to go through some rocks. It's not truly a cave because it's open at the top, but you have to walk back up in there just a little bit to see the fall. And it's a very nice waterfall. It's not a huge one, but it comes down in a pretty good cascade in a couple of different places. And there are a lot of people walking in up there, a lot of kids, a lot of adults. It's fairly easy to traverse, but you will get your feet wet, and it is a mountain stream, and even in the middle of the summer, it's pretty cold. The youngest person I saw up there was, I think, a baby. It was probably about 3 months old. So even very youngsters have been in to see the falls, and of course I went in and being on the older part of the generation.
Yes, I am not the hiker that Jim is, so I did not go to see the falls, but I do enjoy being with him. And, whether I'm sitting in the car at a table or picnic table or whatever. But that particular site is up a 3-mile, very rocky, very bumpy drive. So it was an adventure in itself.
Yes, we ended up in four-wheel low. Just makes it easier to maneuver the thing up the hills. I didn't really need that from a standpoint of getting up the hill, but makes it somewhat easier to control. And as Chris said, it was a 3-mile drive. It took us 45 minutes. So that averages out to about 5 miles an hour if I did the math right or so. It was just as slow coming back down because the rocks are still rocks and you still have to crawl over them. One of the more interesting drives we've taken, it was rougher than some of the roads we've been on before in forest land, but and this is Forest Service land up in there. Until you get to the end, and the state of Colorado actually owns the falls. But it was an enjoyable day, and we'll show you some of those pictures too as we go forward. One of the most beautiful sights in the area, and I saw pictures of this, and it took a while to figure out where it was, and I tried a Google search on the image, and that actually worked. I'd never done that before, but I found a picture that I liked of this church, which is up on the top of a hill. Put it in Google, and it said, where is it? It's in San Luis, Colorado. Now, San Luis, the valley, of course, is named for that, or the town is named for the valley. I don't know which. But San Luis, Colorado is the oldest still inhabited town in the state of Colorado. So it's been around quite a while. And this church was built up on the top of the hill. And what's unique about it, and it's if you search for Stations of the Cross, San Luis, Colorado, you'll bring up the information about it. Knights of Columbus have constructed the Catholic Stations of the Cross on a pathway leading from the road below up the side of the hill and up to the top. The path is not a difficult climb. It is somewhat steep, but if you want to see all of the Stations of the Cross that they have, you really need to take the path up. There is a road that comes in from the backside if you want to get up and just see the top, but I would encourage you, if you're able, to take the walk up to the top. It's a beautiful site, it's a beautiful church, and I think you'll see some of the pictures that I hope you will enjoy. Thanks for watching the channel today. We hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please click the subscribe button down below. That'll help us out, and we appreciate it. And as we travel the highways and byways of America, we hope to run into you and say hello. If not, we'll see you back here on this channel next week. And click the bell icon down below. We'll notify you when we post a new video.
In the meantime, stay well.